evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome to Gloria Meets. We've got the chair of the Health Select Committee, Steve Brine.
You've got to take the bad things that happen in life and use them as fuel to drive you, because something good's got to come out of something very bad.
Labour MP, Ruth Jones.
In 14, I've had a relationship with God, and that's fixed me, and that makes me who I am today.
Conservative MP, Henry Smith.
Just to sort of allow that practice to go on elsewhere is simply exporting the cruelty.
All that after your news headlines.
Good evening to you. At 6 o'clock, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon's been released without charge pending further inquiries after being arrested by police investigating SNP finances. The former First Minister was questioned after voluntarily attending a police interview. In April, her husband, Peter Murrell, who was the party's chief executive, and the ex-treasurer, Colin Beattie, were also questioned and released without charge. The long-running inquiry is investigating what happened to around £600,000 worth of donations earmarked for Scottish independence campaigns. Her home and the SNP headquarters were also searched, with police seen removing boxes of evidence. 3 British tourists are missing after a dive boat burst into flames in the Red Sea off Egypt. Officials say 12 Britons were rescued along with 12 Egyptian crew and guides. It's understood the fire was caused by an electrical short circuit. The Foreign Office has confirmed it's in contact with Egyptian authorities and is assisting those involved. One of Boris Johnson's allies says the resignations of 2 Tory MPs over the last couple of days was not a coordinated attempt to undermine the Prime Minister. Jacob Rees-Mogg insists there's no plot against Rishi Sunak and believes he should remain leader. He also believes Mr Johnson could easily get back into Parliament at the next election. The former Prime Minister announced he was stepping down as an MP after being handed the findings of the Partygate inquiry. Sir Jacob says there could be a split in the party if some MPs try to block Johnson's return, but admits things could have been done better.
One always deserves blame for one's own mistakes. It would be absurd of me to pretend that Boris hasn't made mistakes. There was a man called Peter Wentworth who in the late 16th century was locked up in the Tower for saying in the House of Commons, "None is without fault, no, not our gracious Queen." The same could be said of Boris. None is without fault, no, not our gracious Boris. That is true of all of us.
Well, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey, says the Conservative Party is not fit to lead.
Conservatives are totally divided, completely chaotic and letting people down. When they've got the cost of living crisis, the crisis in the NHS, the Conservatives seem unable to give the lead that Britain needs.
Meanwhile, Leave campaigner Nigel Farage believes it's the end for Boris Johnson, with the Conservatives at least. However, the GB News presenter told Camilla Tominey he's been talking to Tory MPs about potentially joining a new party.
The good side of Boris, of course, is, just look at today's newspapers.
Yes.
He's very good at dominating news.
Yeah.
He does have personality. He does make people smile. And if he wants to defend his Brexit legacy,
yeah.
well, I want to defend my Brexit legacy too. So would there be a possibility of a new coming together on the centre-right? It'd be Boris Johnson, there'd be other MPs that would join in with this as well.
Have you discussed this with Boris Johnson?
Not with him directly, no. But I have discussed it with people very close to him.
Ukraine's confirmed its counter-offensive against Russia is underway. President Volodymyr Zelensky says he's optimistic about regaining lost territory. Ukraine claims its forces have advanced up to 2,000 metres along the front line near the eastern city of Bakhmut. Russia, though, is disputing those claims. And the Met Office is warning about the potential of a month's worth of rain falling over parts of the UK in the next 12 hours. That's as temperatures continue to soar. 30 degrees recorded in Suffolk, 32 is a possibility. Yellow thunderstorm alerts, which have been issued for areas in Scotland, Northern Ireland, England and Wales, will be in force until 9 p.m. tomorrow. And if you think that's hot, a volcano in Hawaii is putting on a spectacular show. Big Island erupted early on Wednesday, spewing ash and a river of lava. The volcano, located in a closed national park, is one of the world's most active. Lava flows, though, are expected to remain confined to the surrounding crater. TV, online, DAB+, tune-in radio. This is GB News. Now it is time for Gloria Meets.
Steve Brine, Conservative MP since 2010. You've got a big job in Parliament. You're chair of the Health Select Committee, which is their cross-party group to scrutinise government's health policies. We're going to be talking about that a bit later, but I want to start with where the personal meets the political. You lost your mum to breast cancer 20 years ago. You were on your stag do when you got a phone call. Can you take me back to that moment?
So I was on my stag do in Wales, and obviously she'd been ill for quite a while. And I was on my stag do in Wales, and it was the night after the night before, and I got a phone call to say, you need to get back to home pronto, which I did. And that was 20 years ago last month. So, but actually, it goes back, like most breast cancer battles, it goes back a number of years. And I remember very clearly, I was at university in Liverpool, living in a house with 6 other boys. It was very clean and orderly, as you can imagine. And of course, nobody had a mobile phone. So, we had one phone by the front door. And the phone never rang for me, very rarely. But, I was upstairs and the phone rang, and one of the lads called up and said, it's your sister on the phone. And my sister was on the phone, and she didn't often call me to say, our mum's got a concern, she's going for an appointment. And that's where that journey started. And so, still to this day, I don't like the phone ringing, because the phone always seems to bring challenging news, I think. So, that's where the journey started. And then that's where it ended 6 weeks before we got married.
6 weeks before you got married?
Indeed, yeah.
You lost your mum?
Indeed. So we carried on with the plans exactly as they were, to the letter. Because the way I viewed it was, if she'd walked into the wedding, she would have known exactly, because she'd been involved in all the planning, so she would have known exactly what it looked like. And so we carried on as we were. But yeah, it was difficult.
What did that personal experience teach you about breast cancer, about how we deal with it in this country, about how families deal with it? What did you learn?
Well, look, everybody comes into politics with a story, right, of some sort, and everyone brings personal experiences into politics, and they shape what they want to do. And you know what it's like when you get into Parliament, they say, what are you interested in? And I said, I'm interested in health. I certainly didn't have a clinical background, but I was interested in health, per se, but I was particularly interested in cancer. I chaired the breast cancer group for many years, along with Sharon Hodgson, who I know you know is a good friend and was my shadow when I was the cancer minister. And I was in the Whip's office, and they said, I was Jeremy Hunt's PPS, and they said, what would you like to do if you left the Whip's office for a departmental job? And I said, I'd love to be the cancer minister at the Department of Health. And they were like, well, that's very specific. Most people just say, I want to be a minister, whatever it is, I want to be a minister. And I said, I want to be the cancer minister at DH and the public health minister. That's all I wanted to do. It's the only job I wanted in government. So, that experience sort of shaped me. I'd always wanted to be in politics, but it gave me a mission, if you like. It gave me a zeal. And, I hope in my time as cancer minister and my time in Parliament so far, I hope I've done my bit to maybe stop the phone ringing for a few more people.
Did you think about your mum on the day that you went into the Department of Health?
Oh, 100%, yeah. And the day I made my maiden speech, but yes, so that's the personal, but I mean, obviously, we lose 12,000 women a year to breast cancer, and some men, you shouldn't forget. We lose 12,000 women a year. And one of the reasons why I brought the breast cancer bill to Parliament, which was the first time that I spoke about my personal experience, because obviously I knew it, but in all the years I chaired the breast cancer group, I used to just allude to the fact that this was a matter that I cared about a lot, but I never actually said why to Parliament, to colleagues, or to my constituents. And when I introduced the breast cancer bill around screening, I said, and this is an issue that I've pursued for a long time, and now everybody knows why. That it's in a way, you've got to take the bad things that happen in life and use them as fuel to drive you, because something good's got to come out of something very bad.
What's your assessment of how the breast cancer screening programme is working now? For example, the day of recording, we're recording on Thursday for this interview to be broadcast on Sunday, but the Royal College of Radiologists have just today said they are struggling to provide safe cancer care.
They've been struggling for a long time. So, there was already a backlog, and there's been a long argument, and there was before I was the minister, there was during when I was a minister, about we're screening too many people and it's leading to over-treatment. I never bought that argument because, frankly, early diagnosis is cancer's magic key. The quicker you diagnose cancers, breast being the best example, you can treat it, and very, very few people die of primary breast cancer. Most people die of secondary breast cancer. So never bought that argument, but there was challenges in the breast screening programme before. There had been some data breaches where people had not been called back. I remember that happened during my time. That broke my heart when that happened, and we worked really hard to cut through that and work through that backlog. And then, of course, COVID happened, and I've said publicly many times, Gloria, that I think it was the wrong decision to stop the breast screening programme during COVID. There were ways of continuing that on hot sites, cold sites. Oncology services were separated out in my local trust in Winchester. There was a way to carry on that programme, and all that's done is added to the backlog. Now, the radiologist report that you're talking about is about staffing in the cancer community, and this is a much wider piece, right? So the NHS will bring out its long-term workforce plan soon. I hope it will come out before summer recess, and that is hugely anticipated within the cancer community, within the health community, because that is finally, hopefully, going to set the NHS on a trajectory to get the staff that it needs. Things have got a lot better in cancer diagnosis, and the fact that we've got so many more people coming forward is a good thing. It's a success story, because it means that people are spotting the signs and symptoms of cancer and they're coming forward. But of course, it's no good just getting them to come forward. Once we then diagnose, we've then got to treat really quickly, because early diagnosis is the magic key, but you can't turn the key in the lock unless you do the treatment.
So you lose your mum 20 years ago to breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, you lose your dad.
Yeah.
To cancer.
So the day Parliament's dissolved for the 2019 general election, he's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he was dying throughout the campaign. So I was empty chaired by my opponents at one of the hustings, because it was the day he was moved to a hospice. They got to live with them doing that. And he died 3 days after the general election. And pancreatic cancer, in many ways, unlike breast, it is not symptomatic until it is stage 2, stage 3 often. And so, he didn't stand a chance. And that's why the gallery trial is so important, and there's been a lot in the news recently on the gallery trial, which is about a single draw of blood, which we think, and we're still trialling and we're still testing at the moment, could detect 50 different cancers at a non-symptomatic stage. I mean, we are talking holy grail here, because non-symptomatic detection of cancer in many cancers is the real magic key, and and pancreatic cancer is one of those where that would be an absolute game changer.
Right, let's go to the big job that I refer to, that you're chair of the Health Select Committee and the business that it's engaged in at the moment.
Yeah.
You're looking at the very thorny subject of assisted dying. You're hearing evidence from a variety of sources at the moment. Has there been anything in particular that stood out for you, or are you still taking it all in?
No, lots of things. So we went to Oregon, to Portland, Oregon in the US, which was the first state to legalise the death with dignity legislation, and many other states in the Union have it now. Of course, Holland and Belgium have had it for some time. Canada has it. What stood out to me is that every jurisdiction that has introduced assisted dying legislation, it has changed from where it started. So when people say there is a slippery slope, there is some veracity to that argument. So in Canada, they are currently, they have gone through the legislative process for this, and they will bring it in, I think, very soon, that you could seek assisted suicide for mental health challenges. In Holland, that is already the case. Many, many people in this country who propose changes to the law say there's no way that would ever happen. There's no way that it would be the case for children. It is the case that you can seek it for children with parental permission in Holland at the moment. So what stood out for me is how the jurisdictions that have introduced it, things have moved on. They've sort of got the first bit, and then they've come back for more. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't make the moral decision to make this change. What we're about is producing a very, very, I hope, respectful, sober, sensible piece of work that will inform probably the next Parliament. This is not a government decision, it's a parliamentary decision. And the courts have been absolutely crystal clear. This is a decision for Parliament, not the courts.
And there was a vote on this.
Yeah.
When we were both MPs together, you're still there obviously, there was a vote in 2013.
Yeah.
I really wrestled. I couldn't decide. I didn't vote. You voted against.
I did.
Do you think just by listening to the evidence, might you change your mind?
Yes, because I'm a Christian in politics, and I've made no secret of the fact, but I'm not elected as a Christian Conservative. I happen to be a Christian, and I happen to be in politics, and I am a Conservative. But so there was definitely a factor in me voting against it before on moral grounds. But, as a politician, you are there to look at the evidence. And as a select committee chair, I 100%, that is my job, to lead a cross-party committee that's doing that. And I might change my mind. I haven't arrived at a place yet, and there is no vote. And who knows if I'll be in the next Parliament? That's not up to me. But at the end of the day, I suspect that the next Parliament will have a vote on this. I suspect whether it comes through a private member's bill from the Commons or through some from the Lords, I suspect the next Parliament will have another vote on this. And then I hope that the work that we've produced will inform that debate around jurisdictions that already have it legalised, around the slippery slope arguments, around the relief of suffering arguments, around all the arguments around palliative care and how good or bad palliative care is. So we're about informing the debate.
And like all these inquiries, you seek public engagement on this.
And boy, have we had it. This inquiry is, I think, the biggest engaged public select committee inquiry in history. So we have had about 50,000 responses to our initial call for ideas and call for evidence. The clerks are absolutely thrilled with me. And this inquiry, a lot of the people who replied obviously were connected to the two sides of the campaign, but many weren't. And we've had evidence submitted to us from all around the world. And we're going to have a session with the Swiss and talking to Dignitas in a few weeks' time. But it's been absolutely huge, the response we've had to this. So there is huge interest in this. And I always take the view that people who care about this a lot really care about this, whichever side they're on.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I think you're probably in that place, They're interested, but they're not sure where they stand. I hope we can inform that a little bit.
Talking about inquiries, there's an inquiry that you're not part of, other than to observe as a parliamentarian, a very senior parliamentarian. The COVID inquiry is now underway. It will start hearing evidence this week. It's not going to report until 2025. It's already cost over £100 million. Is this a good use of time and money?
I think it's the right thing to do. Remember, there was huge demand from the opposition and from the families of the relatives that lost their lives for there to be an inquiry. I mean, other countries have already concluded their inquiry, so I'm not sure why it needs to take that long. But the government say they've already submitted some 55,000 documents to the inquiry. So I mean, Baroness Hallett is very respected, and she'll do a good job. What I'm worried about is not so much the cost, because a lot of people died, a lot of people lost their livelihoods. I'm worried about it becoming a circus. So the talk about Boris's notebooks. I mean, look, most people out there on the street, Boris's notebooks to whom, to what? They passed to the Cabinet Office, who did or didn't pass it to Baroness Hallett. They're just like, this has lost me, right?
Me included.
Right, me too. I don't care about Boris's notebooks. If he wants to give them to the inquiry, give them to the inquiry. They can play the games they like. What I'm interested in is there a really respected piece of work that helps us turn the page and make sure that should this happen again, we're in a better place. So the Select Committee, when Jeremy Hunt chaired it, my Select Committee, has already done an inquiry, actually, coronavirus lessons learned. And it's not about apportioning blame. It's about getting ourselves in a better place. And just finally on this, people think, it's going to take ages, it's not going to report until 2025, and then we might open the book on lessons learned. Actually, Matt Hancock deserves credit here, because Matt set up the UK Health Security Agency, which split out from Public Health England to be the horizon scanning, to look at future pandemics, to look at flu, to look at monkeypox. That's already happening. So, we've already learned some of the lessons of the pandemic, and it's not the case that nothing will move forward until 2025. So, direct answer to your question, yes, it's worth doing. Yes, I think the chair is good, and I respect her. And yes, it will cost money, but public inquiries do cost money. And the alternative is for the government to have just said we're not doing one. And I don't think that would have been a credible position for Boris Johnson.
Steve Brine, perfect example of how the personal meets the political. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up, Labour's Ruth Jones.
Relationships are so important, and who am I to say to somebody else, you can't get married in the sight of God? No, that's not for me to say.
Conservative MP Henry Smith.
But I also think, there's an important point of unity for the sake of delivering for the country. I think where it perhaps becomes a distraction is when it's about the politicians and it's not about the people who've elected them to deliver. I think that's where the problem comes in.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Ruth Jones, Labour MP, elected as the MP for Newport at the age of 56. You were elected in a by-election in 2019, so still relatively new. You're in your first term. It was third time lucky for you standing for Parliament. My goodness, does it make it all the sweeter to get there?
Yes, I suppose so. I knew what I was getting into by that point. So Newport West is my hometown, so it was great to be able to stand in my own place. I've been an activist for 20 years there, so it's really important that I was real. You know, I born and brought up there. Everyone knew me. It's no good saying, oh, she's just parachuted in. No, we know her. She's from up the road, you know, so that was quite handy.
And you had a proper job before you came into politics. You were a physiotherapist. Would politics be better if most or all politicians had a proper job before getting into Parliament?
I think it helps. It helps when you meet people. I mean, obviously, I think the physio job is the best job in the world, but it teaches you how to meet people and get on with people. People have respect for you. The fact you've done shifts, and social hours, you know what it's like to have not enough money at the end of the month, you know, to struggle a bit. People get you. So you're a real person, they're a real person. And I think it helps with the communication, yeah.
And give us some practical advice then, as we all get older. What can we do to avoid those annoying aches and pains and to ensure that we still carry ourselves well?
I mean, basically, it's as you get older, you eat less, move more.
Less.
Sorry about that. That's bad news. But yeah, moving is really important, because if you get aches and pains, the tendency is to freeze, and that's the vicious circle. Then the pain makes you freeze, the muscle spasm makes it worse, and so you don't move even more, and therefore that's not a good thing. So break the cycle, get out there, move a bit. Maybe something as simple as going for a walk every day, but just get out there and do some exercise.
Do you practice what you preach?
Yeah, I have to, yes, because physios have arthritic joints, so you have to keep moving. So yes, I definitely do. Every day do something, yeah.
And I read that going to church is an important part of your life. When did you discover your faith?
I've always been taken to church by my gran. So I was 3 when I first started going to church, to chapel we have in Wales. And I always knew God was there, but it was just, I was about 14 when I suddenly thought, do you know what? Yeah, I need a relationship rather than just thinking about it. I need to get on and do something. So from 14, I've had a relationship with God, and that's fixed me, and that makes me who I am today.
Tell me about what it means to have a relationship with God on a practical level.
It takes the strain because you're not on your own. You've always got somebody there. You also meet brilliant people in church. In Parliament, we've got an all-party parliamentary group of Christians, and we meet for Bible study, for prayer. And it just makes a difference. You know, there are other people, friends, doesn't matter what political persuasion they are, they're there for you and with you. And it just frames your whole life, really.
And does it help for you to pray and read the Bible with people from different parties from your own? Is it all, you know, nice and kind, and any other political differences, they go out the window as soon as you're sat together in prayer?
I mean, we still have disagreements. You know, there may be a passage about a woman, and I might say, well, do you know what, I think the woman should, and then the men might say, oh, no, 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 and it's not political. That might be just a woman versus a male difference, but it's good to talk. The more you talk, the more you get to understand somebody else's point of view, but you can get your own point of view across as well.
Do you think the church has done enough to root itself in the modern world, to recreate itself for the next century, or are there changes you would like to see?
I would like to see more change. I think the church has sat back and waited for people to come to it, whereas we need to be out there. People need to be... The church is not the building, the church is the people. So the people should be out there getting on with life, social justice, homelessness. These are all big issues. What are we doing to tackle these? We had a minister on Sunday, a lovely old friend of mine, who said, you can be angry. It's not wrong to be angry at the situation that's going on. So it's really important that you get angry, sure, but do something about it.
And when it comes to equal marriage, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the church can perform blessings, but not a full marriage ceremony.
It depends on where you're thinking of gay couples.
Yes.
Or, yes. So I mean, it depends on which church you go to. Love is love, and it's all about relationships. Again, it's relationships. You know, God, but also people. Relationships are so important. And who am I to say to somebody else, you can't get married in the sight of God? No, that's not for me to say.
Have you been involved in choirs as part of the church? Do you sing?
Yes, I'm a Welsh woman. Of course, I sing. So yes, I've always sung. I've had some brilliant memories. Been in a choir. Oh gosh, 30 odd years. You know, singing every week was really important, and that's the one thing I miss. Being in Parliament, I can't do regular singing with my choir, so I miss that. But I go and listen to them whenever I can.
More from Ruth Jones after the break.
I understand vaping as part of a step-down process from smoking cigarettes to stopping completely. I understand that can be part of the journey. What I don't want to see, though, is this massive increase in people under 18 vaping.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Yeah. And you held a debate recently on vaping and the effect it has on children, that too many children are vaping was basically the argument that you were making. What do you want to do about that? What needs to change in your view?
So vaping, I understand vaping as part of a step-down process from smoking cigarettes to stopping completely. I understand that can be part of the journey. What I don't want to see, though, is this massive increase in people under 18 vaping. Now, vaping should not be allowed because it's only to be sold to people over 18 anyway. The vapes are for people over 18. But in schools, it's a massive issue. We've got to the situation where people cannot sit a 2-hour exam without having to go out for vape.
Really?
Yes. And this is awful. You know, this is not right. There's the health issues. We don't know about the health issues. These are developing lungs. I've got a passion for developing lungs. We make sure, as a physio, we want to make sure people have the cleanest air. You're vaping. What are you taking in? Because it's not just nicotine. It's the chemicals that go with it. You know, you're ingesting these things. We don't know, there are no longitudinal studies as to the health effects. It took us a long time for the tobacco companies to admit that nicotine is a carcinogenic, and they're doing the same thing now with vaping. Oh no, it's all lovely, bubblegum flavour, orange flavour, you know, they're very attractive. And then of course there's the waste, there's single-use disposables. People throw them away afterwards. The plastic is wasted. There's lots of precious metals in them as well as the chemicals. So we're not really on top of what's going on. We need to be clearer about the problems and the issues and what we should do to stop under 18s vaping.
And that's your basic campaign, that children are vaping. How do you stop them? Because I'm just trying to think to when you and I were younger. So I started, and I wasn't alone, but I started smoking really young, smoking cigarettes.
Yep.
Do young people just do daft things?
Yes, absolutely, which is why, you know, with cigarettes now, you've put them behind the doors, people can't see them, they have to ask for them. Big notices, you know, this kills you, you know, very clearly. And so it should be with vaping. This is potentially a killer. Now, the tobacco industries don't want that. And it's interesting to see how smoothly they've got into gear to say, ooh, there's a lot of fuss about nothing here. Nothing to see here, move on. So that's what makes me think I'm doing the right thing.
Final question. What's the toughest or most unexpected thing about becoming an MP?
Oh, gosh, it's probably all the different levels you've got to work on. So you're working with a constituent. Saturday morning, I had a surgery. We're talking about Palestine and a footbridge in our local area. You know, very different things to talk about with local people, but fabulous. Really good to meet local people. And then you might be in a debate up here about new legislation, which you want to make better. And you can't make it better because the government's got the votes, you know, and those are the sorts of frustrating different levels. But so amazing to be here and, you know, such a privilege. So I just sit back every day and go, oh my word, okay, what are you going to do today, Ruth, to make it better?
Are there particular challenges about being a woman? Member of Parliament?
I suppose, I don't, I'm an older woman, so I don't get the issues that the younger women have. And I'm quite happy to call it out. You know, over the years, I've dealt with sexual harassment in previous jobs, in the trade union movement. You know, I'm quite happy to call it out for myself, but I feel for other women who do get abuse online, especially online, but even face to face. You know, it's not good, and it should be called out.
Can you tell me anything about the sexual harassment you endured?
I mean, it was a long time ago, and looking back, should I have done things differently? Yes, I should have called it out at the time, but as a younger woman, I wanted to get on in the trade union world, so I went around it. There are ways to avoid, you know, if you know that person is there, you don't sit next to them, you try not to be in their presence, you're certainly out of arm's reach. And that's just the way it was. You just avoided.
Ruth Jones, first time we've had a proper chat, actually. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, Conservative MP Henry Smith.
I don't think the next election is in the bag for anybody. And so the interesting time of British politics, I think, continues.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we react to the bombshell news that Nicola Sturgeon has been arrested. What now for independence and the future of Scotland's largest governing party? We'll be speaking to key political figures north of the border, and I'll be reacting in my take at 10. In my big opinion, painful though his departure was, it's time to move on from Boris Johnson. The only winner in this political soap opera is Sir Keir Starmer. Plus, Neil Hamilton, Anne Widdecombe, my top pundits and tomorrow's papers. We're live from 9.
Henry Smith, you were elected as a Conservative MP in 2010. You're not standing at the next election. Why not?
Well, I was 54 just the other day, and I have come to the conclusion that if I'm going to do something else and go on to new opportunities and challenges, now is the time. I've been an MP at the next election for 14 years. I've been in various public roles continuously for 27 years. I was a leader of West Sussex County Council previously. So I've decided now is a good time for a different direction.
Must be a little bit nerve-wracking because you've been there for quite a long time, but some people stay for far longer in Parliament. Do you think some people outstay their welcome? Do you think they stay too long?
Well, I won't name any names, but I think inertia is the easiest thing. And I think it's important sometimes to make steps that might be slightly into the unknown. But I think that's certainly right for most people. And the idea that sort of a career for life now in one area alone, I think is something that is for the history books. So, yeah, I think it's important to know when it's time to go on to other challenges.
You have done a huge amount of campaigning on animal welfare. Why is that an important issue to you?
My mum was passionate about animal welfare. I grew up with a household of animals, a parrot, dachshunds, fish, mice, gerbils, you name it. And she would always write to our local MP, pestering them on animal welfare issues. And so it's really in my DNA. I became vegetarian when I was 18 years old because of animal welfare. I think there are now good environmental reasons to have a meat-free diet, as health reasons as well. But it's something that's always been a passion of mine. And, you know, I've been delighted to have been able to play a part in my time in Parliament in terms of forwarding a number of animal welfare measures.
Do you eat fish?
I don't eat fish. No, I'm completely
Pure veggie since the age of?
About 18, I think, when I was a student, yeah.
And I mean, it's quite common now. It's very common to be a vegetarian now, but it was less so when you were 18, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you often go to restaurants or pubs and there wouldn't be any sort of vegetarian option. And I spent some time in the United States and it was even more difficult there back then. But now it's great. There's lots of variety and choice. So it's good that I think the world's moving towards a more ethical diet anyway.
There'll be lots of farmers who won't like what you're saying.
My brother's a farmer.
Oh, go on. Does he eat meat?
He does eat meat, yes, he does. He does. That's fine. I'm not evangelical about being vegetarian. This is something that's a personal choice of mine, and I respect people's freedom. I think the key thing is that we try to cut out cruelty in the food production process, and so I'm a big fan of labelling of food products as to origin. I was pleased to spearhead in Parliament the introduction of CCTV in slaughterhouses to make sure that there is an independent eye to mitigate against cruel practices. So I think it's about making sure that the welfare standards of animals are the best they possibly can be.
What's left to do on that front?
Well, I've just been introducing a bill that's passed the Commons a few weeks ago, a trophy hunting import prohibition bill. It's now in the Lords, where it's been encountering some headwinds, but hopefully it'll get through that session at the moment. So that would ban the importation of body parts essentially as trophies of endangered species like elephant, for example, but also other parts of the world like polar bears as well. So I'm hoping that will get it onto the statute book. Also another piece of animal welfare legislation ending what they call enriched cages, which is near battery farming for chickens as well. That's another campaign that I've been pursuing in Parliament as well. So in my remaining time, I will continue on those efforts. And I want to continue pursuing the causes I'm passionate about, even when I'm outside Parliament. You don't just have to be an MP to do that, of course.
Last year, the government delayed plans to ban foie gras and fur imports. Now, this is what they say. Fur farming has been banned in the UK for over 20 years. The production of foie gras by force feeding is already illegal in the UK. They don't want to move any further. They say the situation is fine. Tell us why you think they're wrong.
Well, I think, if we deem the production of foie gras, which is obviously, as you know, the force feeding of geese and ducks, and if we ban the production of fur in this country, then I think if we think that's unacceptable here, then we should also think that's unacceptable to import those products. Just to sort of allow that practice to go on elsewhere is simply exporting the cruelty. So I think it's the right thing to do to ban imports of foie gras and fur. I think the vast majority of the public agree with that. It's a simple measure that's now possible on Brexit, that we have these freedoms to be able to do that. The banning of live animal exports for slaughter as well is another thing I think we need to pursue. So these are, I think, easy for the government to do. They enhance animal welfare, and frankly, not the main reason for doing something, but it helps popular as well.
Do you reckon they'll do it before the next election?
I hope so, and I'll continue to push for that.
OK, so 13 years in Parliament. Your party has been in government for all that time. It's a long time to be in government. Your party, from the outside at least, it seems quite factionalised at the moment. Very many different sort of debates and discussion about the future of the Tory party, which you may or may not think is healthy while you're in government. But why so factionalised at the moment?
Well, I think the Conservative Party has always been a very broad church. I think it has represented a large spectrum of views, usually the majority view in the country. I think it's been an extraordinary 13 years. We came into office just off the back of the financial crisis in 2008. We thought the coalition years was interesting. It turns out they were the most stable years, I think, of the last 13. Of course, then we had the EU referendum, the Scottish independence referendum, the sort of Brexit deadlock in Parliament, which you will well remember. And then, of course, Boris's election, the landslide in 2019, then a global pandemic with COVID. It has just been an extraordinary time. Now we've got war in Europe. I think things have been extremely tough for administrations, not just in this country, but around the world as well. So I think it's a reflection of the tough environment we've been in.
Is it healthy to have so many debates about the future of the Conservative Party out in the open? It may be.
I broadly think, part of a strong democracy is being able to have frank discussions and debates, both between parties and within parties. But I also think, there's an important point of unity for the sake of delivering for the country. I think where it perhaps becomes a distraction is when it's about the politicians and it's not about the people who've elected them to deliver. I think that's where the problem comes in.
We all look at the opinion polls. What's the best piece of advice you can give to the leading figures in your party to win at the next election against all odds?
I think, it's addressing the fundamentals in politics and what matters to people that is absolutely important. It is tough, after 13 years of being in government, and as I say, that tough environment that we've been through. I think it's a challenge, and pressures such as cost of living, because of all sorts of global factors, is something that is going to be difficult to address going forward. But I think if you look to address people's fundamental hopes and wishes, and actually sort of almost old-fashioned politics, then I think that it is possible to deliver. I don't think the next election is in the bag for anybody, and so the interesting time of British politics, I think, continues.
What's your favourite veggie meal, just to end on?
Oh, I love Indian food, so I like spice. So a decent vegetable vindaloo is
Vindaloo?
Yeah, oh yeah.
The hotter the better?
The hotter the better, yeah.
Do your eyes water?
No, I'm a pro Vindaloo eater.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Henry Smith.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Back next Sunday at 6 o'clock for Gloria Meets.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. It's certainly turning into another hot one again today. We're feeding in the heat from southern areas of Europe, and that is helping those temperatures climb once again to around 30 degrees Celsius in places. The sunshine that some of us have had as well is helping to develop some thunderstorms and heavy showers throughout the rest of this afternoon and into the evening, so do be aware of some tricky travelling conditions. Torrential downpours and hail is possible. Most of those showers will tend to ease off overnight, but we've got to watch out for this band across southern areas of England and then into Wales as well that could still provide some heavy rainfall overnight. For all of us though, it's going to be another muggy one, temperatures not dropping much below the mid to high teens. Bit of a murky start to Monday for southern areas of England and also far north of Scotland where there is a little low cloud around. That could linger along some coastlines throughout the day, but elsewhere inland a lot of sunshine to be had. That coming with high UV levels, and also pollen will be high as well. Into the afternoon, once again, some thunderstorms and heavy showers developing, particularly western Midlands into Wales, western Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland as well. Another very warm day as well, temperatures widely in the mid to high teens. Into the evening again, the thunderstorms still rumbling on for a little while, but they'll eventually clear down more widely into the overnight period. The clouds still lingering along some coastal areas, but inland we'll see some clear spells, but it's still going to be feeling quite humid and muggy nonetheless as we start off Tuesday. Generally though, we'll see fewer showers developing on Tuesday compared to recent days, and that is because high pressure is trying to reinforce itself from the northwest and helping to